My husband Derek and I have been married for 3 years, together for 7 total. Several years ago, about 6 now, I guess, I worked closely with a male coworker, Paul, that Derek was never fond of. Paul and I never had an inappropriate relationship. Derek's jealousy wasn't completely out of nowhere. I get why he felt that way. Those couple years were a perfect storm of relationship stress. I was working long hours. We were living apart after trying and failing to move in together. Our relationship was still fairly new. And then you add in a handsome coworker I had to spend long hours with and saw more than my boyfriend at the time. Paul was the source of several fights. Again, we never did anything that wasn't completely kosher. Eventually I told Derek he needed to trust me and get over it, or we were going to have to break up. He said he would stop worrying, and for the most part things were good. When Paul transferred out of state a few months later, things were really good. There were no worries at all, and our relationship has been amazingly strong ever since. This last weekend, my husband went out with a couple friends to some bars and a football game. When he came home, he was pretty wasted. We talked for a bit, and he mentioned how a friend of his had told him that he broke up with his girlfriend because she cheated on him. I commented on how that was a bummer and good for him for finding out before they got too serious. Derek, however, had a different take on it. He said it was a shame because they had seemed like a good couple, and if they really loved each other his friend could move past the cheating. Just like he had with me. At first I thought my husband was admitting to cheating on me, and asked him what he meant. He told me he always knew that Paul and I had slept together at least once all those years ago. But he knew I was the one for him and forgave me. I told Derek that I had never so much as even hugged Paul, except maybe at his going away party, let alone slept with him. Derek sort of just patted me on the arm, said of course, and passed out. The next morning I asked him about the conversation and he said it was okay, he had forgiven me, it wasn't even an issue. I again stressed that I had never cheated on him with anybody and I needed him to believe me. He sort of did the same, of course you didn't, babe wink thing again, and went to work. Every time I've tried to talk to him since, he won't hear me out. I'm this close to losing it with him. I need him to know that I never cheated, and I'm hurt that he thinks I would do something like that. What do I do? Do I just let him have this since it's not really hurting anything, or what? I don't want my own husband to think so little of me that he thinks I would cheat. That's not who I am. I am a gemologist. I spend my days in the lab testing and identifying stones. From the nature of my work I also have a large and valuable collection of jewelry but also gem specimens that I keep in a safe I specifically bought and had installed to keep them safe. I also have a second smaller safe for keeping important documents like passports. I own my home and my boyfriend of 2 years recently moved in as he was renting before. I gave him the code to the smaller safe so he could put valuables in it, but he also wants the code for my gem safe. Not to put anything in it, but he says because we are living together now I should trust him and give him the code. I've said no because he has no reason to open the safe as the only thing it's used for is storing my collection. He said he has no interest in my gem collection, doesn't want to look at them, but still wants the code to access them. This is causing tension because he says I should give it to him as a show of trust, and I said no. Because he literally has no reason to go in there, so he doesn't need the code. This is a 6-figure collection, so I'm not being difficult over a few little gems here. I am the only one who knows the code. The safe weighs nearly half a ton, it's bolted to the floor and wall and is from a company who makes safes, vaults and strong rooms for jewelers. You could bring the house down around it and it would still be intact. All of the gems and jewelry in the safe are mine and mine alone. I do not keep any clients' jewelry at home. For my other business doing valuations I rent a separate space and keep client items there. I will give an update once things have panned out. I've moved all of my personal docs out of the little safe and into my gem safe. I told him he isn't getting the code and I will die on this hill. He has no reason to have it and his continued lack of respect by the pushing of my boundaries wasn't okay. I felt like he was trying to manipulate me by making it about trust. After a lot of back and forth he finally admitted that he wanted access to the safe, because he didn't feel like I was sharing the whole house with him. Because I insisted on a tenancy agreement rather than just letting him move in. And he didn't like that part of where he lived was off limits to him. He was also insecure and resented that I have more money than him and own a home whilst he doesn't. He had made a few comments about this before, but I didn't realize it was such a big issue for him. He also said that by keeping him out of the safe made him feel like I thought he was lesser than me, and that it made him feel like I was treating him like a child. I told him if that's how he feels, then this is not the right relationship for either of us, and that it was best we break up. He was shocked that I was ending things over this, cried and asked me to reconsider. When I said no, he then got angry. Called me a stuck-up B*TCH, said he was better off without me anyway, and went to his friends. I told him via text he had 30 days before he had to leave, as per the tenancy agreement. So he didn't need to stay at a friend's. He said he would be gone by the end of the week. 2 days later he came back and packed up all of his stuff and left. He's staying with his friend now. I have changed all the locks. I have an alarm and CCTV system that's professionally monitored, and I have changed the verbal password I have to give when you call up as a precaution. I've checked all of my collection and it hasn't been touched. I also am giving my solicitor the code and safe deposit details to be passed to my executor in the event of my death. I feel horrible because despite all of this I love him. I should have a partner who not only respects my boundaries but takes an interest. I'm pretty cut up right now and missing him, but I know I'll be okay. I have great friends and family around me. Also, diamonds are a girl's best friend, and I have a few knocking around to help cheer me up. I'm a software engineer with a full-time job and a side hustle of doing freelance coding work in my own time. I've always been the type to have a side hustle I put a lot of my free time into. I get really bored sitting idle. My freelance hourly rates are $60 an hour, and at my full-time job, my hourly pay works out to about $40 an hour. So that's how I value my time. Anyway, over Christmas vacation, I was staying at my parents' house. My cousin was also staying over with her 3 young kids from Christmas to New Year's. I'd been planning on doing some work on my freelance projects when I had free time, in the mornings when my family had no plans. I wasn't in any rush. I was already ahead of schedule on them all, but I didn't really have anything else to do. It was in a really rural area, and it's like an hour drive to the nearest anything. Then my cousin and her husband asked if I could babysit all day for 3 days, so they could visit some friends in the area and hang out with just adults. I said I had planned on doing freelance work at the library, and she offered to pay me to babysit. I said I could if they got close to my freelance rates. She wanted a number, and although my freelance rates are $60, I didn't feel like that was right. It was high. But I didn't want to go too low. Honestly, babysitting 3 kids would be harder for me than the routine coding work I had for my freelance project. I don't know a lot about kids, and I've never babysat for long, and I had a feeling it would be stressful and difficult. So I said $35, which is below what I make hourly at work, and what is the bare minimum I'd value my time for, if that time is spent doing difficult work. And she went crazy at me, saying that's a ridiculous rate for babysitting, that I was entitled and being selfish, that I'm trying to take advantage of how she didn't have other options, etc. I said that's way below what I'd be making if I had the time to do my own work, and I'd be putting off my own work to babysit. Her husband then got mad at me, saying that I was a 24-year-old girl, that I'm damn near a child myself, that my time is not worth that much and it's childish to say that it was, and that I was a stupid girl for not knowing that babysitting costs like $15 an hour. When I grew up and have kids of my own, I will see how stupid I was being. I was kind of done with being called stupid, so I just told them I hoped they could find someone else. My mom thinks that I asked for something offensive, and my cousin and her husband obviously did too. I live with my parents and my brother. It's always been a dream of my parents to adopt me and bro, our bio kids. And they had come to the decision that they want to adopt an older kid. They got matched with Jess, who is 13. Due to the current situation, she is not living with us, but we've met before and she spent a weekend with us in January. Jess, despite sometimes being sweet and kind, is very high maintenance and has a lot of anxiety and anger problems. She can go from 0 to 1,000 really quick. During her stay, she got triggered by something when we were in public. She and I went to a clothes shop and my parents were in a cafe nearby. Some guy accidentally grabbed her by her shoulder as he thought she was his daughter, and he apologized immediately and started screaming. I was the only person there, and I tried to calm her down, but she ran off. She was found, shaken, but safe, an hour later. I then got grounded as I had failed in being responsible for my sister. I said I didn't have a sister. My parents were angry about this and said that how dare I be rude about her. Don't I know how much she's been through? She's had other outbursts, but none so huge in public. She can be cold and untrusting and was very clingy to my parents. I do admire her and think she's very brave, but I don't want to live with her. My parents call Jess often. I often say hi and try to be civil and supportive. But it seems like the only thing my parents can talk about is Jess and how brave she is, and she isn't even here yet. We live in a 3-bedroom house, and my parents promised to move to a bigger one later this year. Recently, my parents broke the news to me that Jess will move into my room, and I can pick whether I want to share a room with Bro or Jess. I don't want to share with either. My brother is messy, loud, and is your average 9-year-old boy, and Jess has night terrors and screams the house down. And it's enough having to open my house to her, but I value my privacy a lot and don't want her in my room, which is like my special place. I was crushed. I asked if we were still moving, and my parents were like, "We like this place and have no solid plan." I freaked out and was like, "You guys are forgetting you have another daughter and are too excited about the shiny new one to remember that the one you have has feelings and boundaries, and if you're changing everything I've ever known, at least I deserve to be listened to. If this is how life's going to be, I don't want to have a sister." Good to note, my room is big enough to have a wall put in, and my parents considered it a few years back. I would be happy with that. They refuse, even though we can easily afford it, because it is too much effort. My parents are offended that I'm not being welcoming towards my sister. And I'm offended that the life I knew is going to be turned upside down, and I'm not going to have the thing I value most, my privacy.